Bam! What's going on, y'all? Joseph Morrison, aka Kojo Locs, and I'm coming to you with another video today. This is a loc channel where I discuss loc content, so if you're interested in that, please hit the subscribe button, smash the like button, tell a friend about the channel. Oh, and make sure you hit the notification bell so you're notified on all the posts when I post them. Today we're going to be discussing basically just like dreadlocks in history and kind of giving you all a little bit of background information on where locs came from and, you know, why locs were a thing, and just giving you some information that maybe you didn't know about. You know, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that have the narrative that locs essentially just came from black people. Right? Okay, I mean, calm down. Came from black people, right? Everybody knows that. That's obvious. Yeah, black people. This guy's an idiot. Locs actually came from white people. So, sorry to burst your bubble, but we did this. We began the whole movement, so it's cool. Anyway, yeah, go ahead, Joseph. Go ahead, Joseph. Tell them what you're about to tell. Okay, I was actually just gonna get into talking about the different cultures and how, you know, locs kind of came
how
from,
they came from black people.
We know, bro. They came from black people. Like, it's obvious. Like, this guy's an idiot. You're an idiot. You're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know your history. How am I an idiot? You're an idiot. You know nothing about your history at all. Dude, I know you. I've known you your whole life. You know, you were born in Sacramento. What are you talking about? You're stupid. You're stupid. Shut up. You're stupid. You're stupid, bro. Dude, you think I'm scared of you, bro? You're stupid. You're stupid. You're stupid. You're stupid. Alright guys, this really isn't getting anywhere. Are you stupid, bro? You're stupid. No, you're stupid. You're stupid. Bro, are you stupid? You're an idiot. You're stupid. Dummy. You're dumb. You know you're dumb, right? You're dumb. Stupid. Alright. Those two will argue forever. So, anyway, as I was saying before I was rudely interrupted, essentially I just want to go over giving you a little bit of background story and a little bit of history on where locs came from, what cultures were locs, and some of the reasons why they wore them, right? It's kind of good to have an understanding of the hairstyle that we have and just looking into the history of it, and maybe there'll be a little bit more of a deeper meaning for yourself rocking your locs if you have them, or if you're thinking about getting locs, or maybe you're just a historian. This is the video for you, so stay tuned. So a lot of the studies show that dreadlocks pretty much go back to the days of the mummies, and that's where they basically discovered dreadlocks. They found matted hair or dreadlock type styles on mummies, and this was back between 200 and 800 CE. You'd also find them on Aztec priests back in the 14th and 15th century. So obviously this is a very, very, very long time ago, and they would wear hair that was matted similar to dreadlocks. So they might not have called it dreadlocks back then or locs back then, but that's pretty much as far back as it goes, as far as the last time that, or the first time rather, that dreadlocks were a thing. And you know, after making those discoveries, dreadlocks kind of became more of a religious thing in a way, where dreadlocks were worn basically to show that you're not going to tamper with or pamper, if you will, the hair that's been given to you from God. So by showing your respects to God, you're basically saying, I'm not going to pamper my hair or do anything like that because I'm blessed to have this hair. And that's, I guess, where the locs derived from and kind of started to be pushed into the way of it being more of a spiritual journey. And there was a lot of that essence to it where, you know, it was looked at as something that was more holistic, natural, and people would do it out of respect for the fact that they have the life they have and they have the natural resources they have that have been given to them from God and things like that. So for example, in Ethiopia, priests in Coptic churches would wear them they've worn them for hundreds of years. In India, sadhus, who are basically like ascetic Hindus, wore them as well. They would have matted hair as well to kind of show the same type of respect for living that natural lifestyle that they believe they've been blessed with from God. Buddhists in Tibet, members of the Muslim Bayfall sect in Senegal, Maori in New Zealand, tribes in Namibia and Angola. I mean, they all have worn locs, and you know, as I'm listing off those different places, you obviously hear there's a large group of them coming and driving from Africa, but there were also a lot of different cultures, like people in New Zealand, who wore locks, all a lot for the same reasons, whether it be for religious purposes or to show more respect for the gifts that they've been given from God and the blessing they've been given from God, or in some cases it was looked at as a way to show that you're a warrior, or it was a way to show your strength. So that's kind of a little bit of a backstory of just kind of like where locks derive from and whatnot. But by far, the most recognizable group today that people would reference when you think about locks are Rastafarians, or Jamaican Rastafarians. So the Rastafarian movement started in the 1930s, and it was pretty much where a small group of people that had locks believed that Haile Selassie, who was the emperor of Ethiopia at the time, they believed that he was the Messiah, and that was a way for them to show their respects to him in trying to be more like him or more God-like, by not obviously tampering with their hair and things of that nature, and living a more natural, as people today would say, hippie-ish type of lifestyle. And essentially Rastas see locks as a way to kind of stay in a pure state, right? You're not tampering with anything, you're not tampering with what you've been blessed with, you're keeping everything pure, you're keeping it natural, and that's why most true Rastafarians actually go with the freeform lock style, which is where, you know, you're not doing what I'm doing and kind of manicuring your locks and going back for retwists and all those kinds of things. You're just letting your natural hair grow the way that it's going to grow, and that's what it is, right? That's the most purest and most natural lock style or lock form that you can have, and that's kind of what the Rastafarian movement was all about. Also, one of the reasons why, you know, they don't cut their locks. So for those of you who are familiar with Christianity, there was a story in the Bible about a gentleman named Samson who basically had super strength because he didn't cut his hair. Like, his hair was what he grew strength from, and when his hair was cut, he lost his strength. So a lot of Rastafarians kind of have that same belief and take from that same story to kind of feel that way about their locks. And not necessarily saying it's about super strength, but just super strength in the way that you're trying to be as pure as possible, and that they do feel it does give them a sense of power and a sense of calm and a sense of being closer to God when they maintain their locks the way that they're growing, so freeform style, and just letting it grow as long as can be. So typically Rastafarians' hair gets really long, as I'm sure you've seen, and if you haven't, here's a couple pictures to show you. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean that just because you don't have locks that you can't be a true Rastafarian, and there are a lot of Rastafarians who don't have locks, right? But dating back to the 1930s is when it started, and was a big part of what started that movement and a big part of what they would use to kind of identify themselves as Rastafarians who are trying to be closer to God. So we kind of do know now that dreadlocks did start on the continent of Africa, and in the Rastafarian movement, that's a big part of what they draw from. They look at Africa as home or as the motherland, and that's kind of where you might have heard that term from. And one of the reasons why is because that to them is more symbolic of a natural life and being more pure to the lifestyle that is closer to God or closer to Selassie. And the Western world is looked at more of a Eurocentric place, and where there is a lot more tampering, and it's just farther away from their ideals and their beliefs, and that's why a lot of Rastafarians really do consider Africa or consider that continent to be home, or the motherland, as I'm sure you've heard. So following that, pretty much in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, the Rastafarian movement was getting bigger and bigger, and a big part of that was wearing locks. Like, that's when you really saw the predominance of that movement being bound and being really rooted in wearing locks. So most Rastafarians at the time did wear a lock. And, you know, there's a lot of, I guess, compelling thoughts and conflicting thoughts, I guess, to the history of locks and things of that nature, especially around this time. For example, a scholar by the name of Horace Campbell, who was a big scholar at the time, kind of theorized that the Rastafarian movement was actually inspired by the guerrillas in Mau Mau, which is a place in Africa. So this was the faction of people who pretty much rebelled against the British back in the 50s, and a lot of them did have locked hair. So Horace kind of believes that the 40s and 50s and 60s, that real push of locks that you were seeing were kind of more derived from that movement as well. And I guess my thought to it would be that it's kind of a combination of both, right? Obviously the 1930s being when the Rastafarian movement started, it's starting from them wanting to be closer to God, and Selassie being the emperor of Ethiopia at the time was a big part of that movement as well. So if you're going into the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and the different rebellions that happened against the British, where you were seeing a lot of the people in Africa standing up for themselves more and whatnot. I just think it was kind of a combination of all things. And in saying all this, I don't think it necessarily has to be a situation where this particular group is taking ownership or that particular group is taking ownership. I think 100%, locks came from Africa, but really any of these groups who started wearing locks weren't doing it necessarily just to say we're starting something cool. They were doing it because they felt like they wanted to be closer to God, or they were doing it to stand up for what they believed in these rebellions that we've heard of and know about over the course of history. So really, the notion of the argument that you see today where, white people might want to claim it, black people might want to claim it, South Asians want to claim it, like all different people just want to claim where it came from. And at the end of the day, it's like, it's not about that, right? Clearly, this was something that was about unity. This was something that derived from standing up for yourself and what you believe in and living a lifestyle that is closer to God. Now, if you're someone who isn't religious in any way, that's fine. I'm not saying you have to be. But, being closer to God, basically for someone like yourself, if you're not religious, just means being a good person and being pure and doing the right thing and doing things that you would know that the God character would be, right? So, I guess that's kind of my thought to all of this. People always try to take ownership and then find a reason to claim things in history, but at the end of the day, let's just look at what it's really about and try to respect that as the essence of what particularly dreadlocks are all about. There's just different things when you think about locks. So for example, even the term dreadlock, there's a lot of lockers who don't like this term. They think the term dreadlock has a negative connotation. To be honest, a lot of people think that and don't really have any idea of why. But the history books do show that there were Rastafarians in Jamaica specifically. One of the disciplinary actions that were taken against them if they were being bad or weren't walking in accordance to the faith, they would be deemed dreadful. And that's a lot of where this stigma of dreadlocks being a bad name came from. And, I understand that, I respect it. If you're somebody who feels like the word dread should not be a part of the word locks, I get it, do you, right? But at the end of the day, for me, I'm either here nor there with it. To me, I'm all about context, and I think if someone's just calling it dreadlocks, they're not saying it to be disrespectful 90% of the time, right? I think most people now would just call it dreadlocks because that's just what they know the name to be. So I think that name has kind of, the stigma or the negative connotation to the term dreadlock has kind of been washed away, and I think it's okay. And in my opinion now, if we're kind of reminding people that it's a bad thing, are we doing more harm than good, or who knows, right? So, but that is a little bit of history just in terms of like where the negative connotation to the word dreadlock came from. And now obviously you can see dreadlocks are something that are a lot more mainstream, of course. You're seeing them on every rapper, you're seeing them on athletes, you're seeing them on all types of different cultures, you're seeing them on everybody. And I think at the end of the day, in my opinion, that's a good thing. Like, why would that be a bad thing? I think in most cases, people are wearing it because they have a respect and an affinity for, even if it's just the style of locks, right? But most people would say that it is cultured and rooted from Africa, which it is. And they're kind of paying their respects to that in their own way. Now, I'm not saying that everyone that has locks is like, yeah, Africa. But they like the style, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? They're obviously wearing this style because it makes them feel good, and what's wrong with that, I think it's good when, different cultures come together and we respect and appreciate things that other cultures have brought to us, and we get to learn about one another, and we get to partake in some of the traditions that different cultures partake in, and we get to share. I think that's what humanity should be all about, spreading the love. I know you guys see me wearing those shirts all the time, but I wear them because it's like a simple message that I really think is important. And even just seeing that spread love message really kind of hits home, just in all avenues. So I think that when it comes to locks specifically, if you like them, rock them. If you hate the term dreadlock, then you don't say dreadlock. But don't come down on somebody that says dreadlock if that's not the context that they're using it in. To each his own, and I think at the end of the day, we're all a part of this lock community. We're all here because we want to share, we want to be a part of a positive community We want to be able to come together with something that bonds us, and if that's Locs, then so be it. Now, mind you, there's a lot more history when it comes to Locs, and there's a lot more deep diving that I've done that I would encourage you to do if you want to kind of get more specific. But generally speaking, that's kind of where Locs came from and how they became to be the Locs that we know today, and kind of the lineage in which they walked through. But ultimately, I love it. I think the Loc community is great. I think it continues to thrive, and obviously with things like the internet, we're able to share a lot more our locking community, our locking journey, and just overall like sharing with one another, right? And being more of a community of people just in general. So let me know what you think. If you have anything to add to my little miniature history lesson today, please do. You know, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot them down in the comments. Like and subscribe to this video. Definitely share it with a friend who you think would be interested in knowing just the brief details of the history of Locs and things of that nature. And that's all for me today. Kojo Locs signing out. I will catch y'all in the next one. Peace and love.